Have you ever felt drained after spending time with certain people? That gnawing feeling that something just isn't right, but you can't quite put your finger on it? You're not alone. The harsh truth is that some people in your life are silently poisoning your well-being, your dreams, and your future success. Most of us desperately crave connection and surround ourselves with people, but we fail to recognize that many of these relationships are actually toxic. Research shows that negative interactions can be more psychologically damaging than positive relationships are beneficial, meaning one toxic person can undo the positive impact of multiple healthy relationships. Here's what most people don't understand. The people around you have an enormous influence on who you become and how you live your life. They shape your thoughts, your confidence, your decisions, and ultimately your destiny. That's why it's crucial to be ruthlessly selective about who gets access to your energy, your time, and your headspace. Today, I'm going to reveal the 7 types of people you need to eliminate from your life immediately before they destroy your potential and steal your happiness. This isn't about being mean or judgmental. This is about protecting your mental health and creating space for the relationships that will actually elevate your life. Type 1, the chronic critic, the dream destroyer. Picture this scenario. You share an exciting goal or achievement with someone, and instead of encouragement, you get a barrage of reasons why it won't work, why you're not ready, or why you should lower your expectations. Sound familiar? Critics are everywhere, waiting in the shadows to tear down anything positive in your life. These people have made criticism their default mode of communication, and they genuinely cannot see the good in anything or anyone. What makes them particularly dangerous is that their criticism often comes disguised as helpful feedback or realistic advice. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Critics are typically dealing with their own profound sense of failure and frustration. They've given up on their own dreams, so seeing others pursue theirs triggers intense discomfort. Rather than dealing with their own pain, they project it onto you through relentless negativity. The psychological damage critics inflict is severe. Constant criticism chips away at your self-esteem, leading to hopelessness, shame, and anxiety. Research confirms that sensitivity to criticism can contribute to low self-esteem, as individuals internalize and magnify negative feedback. Over time, you start doubting your abilities, second-guessing your decisions, and ultimately abandoning your goals, which is exactly what the critic wants. Their ultimate objective is simple but sinister: make you feel inferior so they can feel better about their own failures. When you succeed despite their criticism, it forces them to confront their own inadequacies. When you quit because of their negativity, they get temporary relief from their internal pain. The antidote: start recognizing criticism for what it really is: someone else's unresolved trauma being projected onto your life. Set firm boundaries with critics, and remember, constructive feedback builds you up while toxic criticism tears you down. Type 2, the pathological liar, the trust assassin. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, but how can you build anything solid with someone whose words are worthless? Pathological liars don't just tell occasional white lies. They've made deception their way of life. What makes liars particularly dangerous is their sophistication. They're master storytellers who create elaborate narratives to get what they want, and they often become so skilled at deception that they can lie without showing obvious signs of dishonesty. They've learned to think fast and avoid hesitation markers like ums and ahs that typically reveal dishonesty. The research is clear about the devastating impact of dishonesty. Lying creates walls between people, making genuine intimacy impossible. When someone lies to you repeatedly, they're essentially saying your relationship isn't worth honesty, respect, or authenticity. But the damage goes deeper than just the immediate deception. People unconsciously sense when someone is being dishonest and tend to like them less as a result. This creates a toxic cycle where the liar becomes increasingly isolated, leading them to lie even more to maintain their facade. As Shakespeare wisely observed, small lies make the big liar. What starts as harmless deceptions inevitably escalates. Once someone builds tolerance for lying, it becomes easier to tell bigger lies when they think they're justified. Eventually, you'll find yourself caught in their web of deceit, potentially facing serious consequences for their dishonesty. The warning signs: stories that don't add up, details that change over time, promises that are never kept, and a general sense that something feels off about their communication. Type 3, the pessimist, the energy vampire. We all know them, the people who can find a dark cloud in every silver lining. Pessimists are masters of negativity who only see problems, never solutions. They approach every situation with the assumption that the worst outcome is not just possible, but inevitable. The psychological research reveals just how destructive pessimistic people can be to your mental health. Pessimism is associated with anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and chronic stress. When you're constantly exposed to negative thinking patterns, your brain literally begins to rewire itself to expect the worst. Here's what makes pessimists particularly draining: they don't want solutions. When faced with challenges, instead of looking for ways to improve the situation, they prefer to complain, criticize, and spread their negative energy to everyone around them. Even when you try to help by offering practical solutions, they'll find reasons why nothing will work. The contagion effect is real. Research shows that people with pessimistic outlooks tend to have less social support, lower resilience, and reduced ability to cope with stress. When you spend time with chronically negative people, you risk adopting their mindset through emotional contagion, essentially catching their negativity like a virus. The long-term consequences are severe. Pessimistic people are more likely to avoid reasonable risks in career, relationships, and personal endeavors because they anticipate failure. This risk aversion leads to missed opportunities, fewer positive experiences, and limited personal growth, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of negativity. The reality check: while some caution can be healthy, chronic pessimism is a toxic mindset that will slowly poison your own outlook on life. Studies suggest that neither extreme optimism nor pessimism is healthiest. Realism appears most beneficial for mental health. Type 4, the narcissist, the relationship hijacker. Narcissists operate under the delusion that the world exists to serve them. They see themselves as superior beings who deserve special treatment, constant admiration, and unwavering attention. What makes them particularly dangerous is their complete inability to see you as a separate person with your own needs, feelings, and worth. The research on narcissistic relationships is deeply troubling. Studies show that emotional abuse occurs in 99% of relationships with narcissistic individuals, followed by deception, 95%, financial abuse, 83%, physical abuse, 62%, and sexual abuse, 59%. These aren't just statistics, they represent the systematic destruction of their partner's well-being. Narcissists view relationships as purely transactional. You exist to provide them with admiration, validation, and services. The moment you need something from them, emotional support, genuine care, or basic respect, they either become angry or simply disappear. They sacrifice the relationship for themselves, not themselves for the relationship. The manipulation tactics narcissists use are sophisticated and devastating. They employ gaslighting to make you doubt your reality, use silent treatment to punish and control you, and create explosive anger when their needs aren't met. They violate your boundaries consistently and engage in constant criticism designed to erode your self-esteem. What makes narcissistic abuse particularly insidious is the cycle it creates. Narcissistic relationships often begin with intense love bombing, where they shower you with attention and affection. This creates powerful emotional bonds that make it extremely difficult to leave when their true nature emerges. As the relationship progresses, there's often a sharp rise in toxicity, with partners experiencing constant criticism, emotional abuse, and walking on eggshells to avoid triggering anger. The psychological damage is profound. Victims often experience anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, chronic stress, feelings of worthlessness, and lose their self-confidence. Many develop symptoms similar to PTSD from the ongoing emotional trauma. Type 5, the gossip, the trust destroyer. Gossips are among the most dangerous people you'll encounter because they appear harmless on the surface. They present themselves as friendly confidants who just want to share information or vent about others. But make no mistake, gossips are fundamentally untrustworthy individuals who traffic in other people's private business for their own gratification. The psychology behind gossip reveals its true toxicity. Research shows that gossip destroys trust by sending a clear message to everyone listening. I might do the same thing to you. Even when people agree with the gossip in the moment, a seed of doubt is planted in their minds about what you might be saying about them when they're not around. What drives people to gossip? It often stems from feelings of medo, fear, and envy. Gossips are typically people who feel inadequate about their own lives, so they find temporary relief by focusing on and criticizing others. They're seeking validation, looking for someone to agree that they're right and the other person is wrong. But here's the crucial insight. Gossip doesn't just avoid conflict, it amplifies it. Instead of addressing issues directly with the people involved, gossips create a toxic atmosphere where problems fester and grow. What could have been resolved in a single honest conversation turns into months or years-long resentments and divisions. The most overlooked cost of gossip is what it does to the gossip themselves. When people engage in chronic gossip, they step out of alignment with their own integrity, creating a gap between who they want to be and who they're choosing to be. This internal conflict manifests as increased stress, anxiety, and guilt over time. The damage to relationships is severe. Gossip creates a culture of fear, mistrust, and backstabbing. It doesn't stay contained to one area of life. If someone gossips at work, that toxic behavior inevitably spills into their personal relationships and vice versa. Type 6, the manipulator, the puppet master. Manipulators are perhaps the most dangerous people on this list because they're often the hardest to identify. They're skilled emotional con artists who use sophisticated psychological tactics to control your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for their own benefit. What makes manipulation so insidious is that victims are often emotionally involved with the manipulator, which makes it extremely difficult to recognize what's happening. The manipulation often starts subtly and escalates gradually, making it feel like a normal part of the relationship dynamic. One of their most effective tactics is victimization. Manipulators constantly position themselves as the victim in every situation, making you feel responsible for their problems, failures, and emotional states. They use phrases like, "If you had helped me, I would have succeeded," or "It's your fault I did this," to transfer responsibility for their actions onto your shoulders. The psychological research reveals other common manipulation tactics. Love bombing, overwhelming you with excessive attention, flattery, and affection to create emotional dependency. This creates powerful trauma bonds that make it difficult to leave even when you recognize the manipulation. Gaslighting, deliberately distorting reality to make you doubt your own perceptions and sanity. Over time, this erodes your confidence in your own judgment and makes you increasingly dependent on the manipulator's version of reality. Guilt tripping, intentionally making you feel guilty over minor issues or things that aren't your responsibility. This keeps you in a constant state of emotional debt to them. Silent treatment, using emotional withdrawal as punishment to make you feel guilty or ashamed. This creates anxiety and desperation to restore their approval. The long-term effects of manipulation are devastating. Victims often experience anxiety, depression, loss of self-confidence, and difficulty trusting their own judgment. Even when you logically know you've done nothing wrong, you still end up feeling guilty and responsible for the manipulator's behavior and emotions. The protection strategy. Learn to recognize manipulation tactics early. Trust your gut feelings when something seems off. And remember that healthy relationships don't require you to constantly question your own reality or walk on eggshells. Type 7, the envious person, the success saboteur. Envy is one of the most destructive emotions in human relationships, and envious people are capable of extraordinary cruelty to satisfy their jealousy. Unlike simple admiration or healthy competition, envy is a corrosive emotion that drives people to actively undermine and sabotage others' success and happiness. The research on envious behavior reveals disturbing patterns. Envious people refuse to celebrate others' success, find themselves unhappy when people around them achieve goals, and actually experience joy when others face setbacks or failures. They engage in constant scrutiny and judgment of others, consistently downplaying and diminishing other people's achievements. What makes envious people particularly dangerous is their willingness to take active steps to harm those they envy. They spread rumors and false information, offer fake compliments while plotting behind your back, and attempt to copy or compete with everything you do. Their goal isn't just to succeed themselves, it's to ensure you fail. The psychology behind chronic envy reveals why these people are so toxic. Envy often stems from deep-seated beliefs that success and good fortune are scarce resources, combined with a tendency to judge themselves against others' achievements. They operate from a scarcity mindset, where your success automatically means their failure. Envious people will systematically try to infiltrate and dominate every area of your life. They'll copy your style, your career moves, your relationships, and even your personal mannerisms. They want a better car than yours, a bigger house, and will even compete for the attention of your friends and family to feel more popular than you. The research shows that this kind of jealousy can lead to feelings of anxiety, worthlessness, and even acts of verbal or physical abuse. History is filled with tragic examples of envy-driven violence, from workplace sabotage to actual murder. Jealousy and envy are toxic, misplaced anger that can escalate to dangerous levels. The most insidious aspect of dealing with envious people is that they often present themselves as friends or supporters while secretly working to undermine you. They're the people who get closest to you, pretending to be allies while sucking value out of your life and waiting for opportunities to tear you down. The self-protection protocol. Limit the personal information you share about your successes. Be cautious about people who seem overly interested in your achievements, and pay attention to those who consistently minimize your accomplishments or seem uncomfortable with your happiness. The path forward. Reclaiming your life. Eliminating toxic people from your life isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. Research consistently shows that the quality of your relationships directly impacts your mental health, physical well-being, and life satisfaction. You have limited time, energy, and emotional capacity. Every moment you spend managing toxic relationships is a moment stolen from building healthy, supportive connections that actually enhance your life. The process starts with honest self-assessment. Look at the people in your inner circle and ask yourself, after spending time with this person, do I feel energized or drained? Do they celebrate my successes or find ways to diminish them? Do I feel safe being authentic around them, or am I constantly managing their emotions and reactions? Remember that setting boundaries isn't negotiable, it's essential. Toxic people will often escalate their behavior when you start pulling away, using guilt, manipulation, or even threats to maintain their access to you. This is exactly when you need to stay strong and remember why you're making these changes. The space you create by removing toxic people from your life is not empty space, it's fertile ground for healthier relationships to grow. When you stop accepting negativity, criticism, manipulation, and drama as normal parts of relationships, you naturally begin attracting people who share your values of respect, authenticity, and mutual support. Your mental health, your dreams, your peace of mind, and your future success are too valuable to sacrifice for people who don't genuinely care about your well-being. The toxic people in your life are counting on your kindness, your guilt, and your fear of being alone to keep them in positions where they can continue draining your energy. Don quote T let them win. The journey to building a toxic-free life starts with a single decision, choosing to value yourself enough to demand better. You deserve relationships that inspire you, support you, and bring out the best in you. But first, you have to be brave enough to let go of the ones that don't.